We're starting with Chase Elliott, driver of the number 9 Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports, and we also have Eric Warren with us, who's the director of NASCAR programs for GM. We are going to go straight into questions. We will start with Bob Pockris.
Yeah, for both of you, can you give us any idea, or do you have any idea of what can the teams control in this car, if anything, when you get to the track on how to make the car run better?
That's on you. Yeah.
So one of the great features about the next gen car, there are actually a lot more adjustments to the handling and suspension than there are on the current car. Different, you got typical suspension geometry and things like that. But by having the independent rear suspension, there's a whole other degrees of freedom of being able to control camera, different things in the rear, and things that you can't do now with suspension geometry. We can work in the front, but not in the rear. The next gen car really allows us to have both ends of the car there. Also, there's some different things, the way the dampers and the springs in the front suspension attach to the car, that there are a couple of new adjustments to how much load goes in the steering based on Corning force. So there are new things in the car that don't exist in the current car that are exciting, and really the number of variables that you can change are actually a lot higher than what exists in the current car.
All right, next we will go to Deb Williams.
Thank you. This is for Chase. Chase, what do you like about this car as far as the handling, the response time and all that you don't have in the current car?
Well, that's a great question. I haven't had my turn yet, so I'll let you know when I get an opportunity. But my time driving it from the back of the building to the center of the building, it was fantastic. So that's all I have to offer on that one.
Okay, and for Eric, I wanted to ask you, in order to give the Camaro its street identity, so to speak, put stock back in stock car, what were some things that you definitely wanted to see incorporated into this car? Did you get all of them? And if you didn't, which ones didn't you get?
I mean, I feel like having the opportunity to do a clean sheet design, the most important thing was really get the proportions right with a coupe rear wheel drive performance car. So the greenhouse, the lower greenhouse and the deck lid size really matches up really well to the production car. So between that and the independent rear suspension were the two big things. Visually, the wheels obviously match up quite well, but the independent rear and the proportion of the car are the two big things that we really pushed and wanted to make sure we're in the car.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we're going to go to Spencer Hill.
Yeah, my question is both for Chase and Eric. Do you feel like this next gen car has met the needs that the drivers have asked for to produce better racing on the track?
Well, that's a tough one because we haven't raced it yet. So, I mean, to be completely honest and blunt about it, I mean, until we get on track and we can really understand what the challenges are, I don't know that anybody can answer that question honestly. Somebody might give you an answer, but if it's probably not going to be honest, because I don't really think anybody knows. So until we, get out there and honestly, there's challenges that I don't think even Eric having time to go test the car, I don't think we've faced all the challenges yet. So we just need more time with it. And, I know COVID's been a bad situation, but I'm personally thankful for this extra year that we've had to develop. I know from our end, I'm sure all the OEMs are, to give us more time to work on this thing. But from a driver standpoint, I think until we get out on the track and we start mixing it up and seeing how the racing differs from your super speedways to your mile and a half to your short tracks, there's a lot of unknowns, and I'm in the majority. I think when I say I don't know about everything there is to know about the racing, I think it's all a big question mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think the potential, you talk about potentials because, as Chase said, what I do know is we spent decades, really multiple decades of trying all types of different aero packages and dragging downforce levels and all types of rules to try to improve. And eventually you get to a point where like, okay, we're out of options here. And a lot of it was, how close the cars run to the ground and really getting some airflow under the car. And so as you start looking at it, we're like, all right, we got to kind of start over. It really gave us opportunities. We talked through it over the years. We're like, okay, what are important things that we feel like are ingredients? And so until the cake fully gets baked, as we want to see it, as Jay said, in traffic, those types of things, we can only hope and think the car's got a lot of potential. And it's going to take time to learn about it. I mean, I'm sure you're going to, first time we run together, there's going to be a steep learning curve for everybody. And first couple of years are going to be exciting to see who rises to the top. And ultimately, the good teams and the good drivers will always come out on top.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Next, we'll go to Claire B. Lang.
Okay. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm in the dark room here. But let me ask you, Chase, how long do you think it will take for most of the drivers to figure these cars out? And what it will take for the best drivers in the world to take on a new car and, get to the level that you're at, with the cars now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I have to think that the really good guys will figure it out pretty quick. I think it's a matter of the drivers figuring it out, and then the big one to me is going to be marrying that up with the teams being able to give them what they want in the car, and then honestly realizing what is achievable. Like, can you give me this feel inside the car, or is that just is not having that normal now? And that to me is the big question. Is we have this, history and all this time with this current car that we consider things to be normal, and that might not apply here. And I think that's what's going to be really challenging for the drivers, and just me looking at it ahead to next year. You might have to reinvent yourself. I mean, there might be things and habits that I do today right now that work and you can get away with that might not be an option next season. So I think it's going to be tough. But I think the good guys will figure it out as I think they always do and have over the years. But that's not to say it won't be difficult. I think it'll be a challenge for everybody.
Chase, will it be like a confidence thing where people always tell us, oh, with these new cars, that the cream will rise to the top? So do you feel like it'll be a confidence thing for the veteran drivers to know that you'll pick up on it quicker than, say, somebody who, is new?
Well, I think the argument can be made both ways because, a guy that's been around for a long time, as I mentioned a second ago, you might have habits and things that you do with our current car that work, that you have success with, that you strive to achieve, or a certain feel you look for every week. And then you might have guys coming in who don't have those, 5 years or 10 years or 15 years of experience, and they don't know any better, right? So there's no bad habits to have to be broke, which is honestly, it's a completely different advantage point, but there could be an advantage in that too. So it'll be interesting to see because, my vantage point's changed. I mean, this is my 6th year, which is crazy. But with those 6 years, I have created habits and things that I do inside the car that I'm curious to see if they apply next year or not. And I think I'm not the only guy in that boat. So looking forward to just seeing what the challenges are and how to work through them.
Thanks for the insight, Chase. Thank you.
Yep.
Next, we're going to go to Sam McEachran.
Hi, thank you. My question's for Eric. I wanted to know, since last time we saw with the Gen 6 car that the Chevy SS switched to the Camaro halfway through, I was wondering if you could provide any insight on how long Chevy plans to race the Camaro body.
Well, I think, now that we're going to have the closeness between the race car and the Camaro, we're going to race it as long as Camaro exists because it's the closest connection between the race car, the production car, which ought to be exciting for all the fans and the Camaro owners and customers. And so we have no plans to swap models at the moment that I'm aware of. And so I look forward to a long ride with this car and look forward to the success of it.
All
Thank you.
right. Next, we're going to go to David Swope. David, it looks like you're muted. You have to unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. I was curious, how well do you think that the tailoring and the detailing of the car translates to the street car?
Well, I mean, I think the visuals kind of speak for themselves. I mean, obviously, I think one of the key things that we as the industry we're trying to achieve with this car is to have something that looks more like what an individual could go buy at their Chevrolet dealership at home, which is to me a piece that we got away from from the COT and kind of that whole process. So I think NASCAR recognized that they're trying to get back in the direction of having some identity with their cars. I think this achieved that. I haven't spent a bunch of time looking at the other two, but the Chevrolet side looks a whole bunch like the Camaro ZL1 that's sitting right here that you could go buy at home. So Eric's, you speak on it, but I mean, I think a lot of that went into the thought process and the design. If you don't have that connection, then we're completely missing the point.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time between the engineers on the teams and then the GM Motorsports working with the designers at Chevrolet. And, the front is very similar. You can almost lay the two over in CAD, and really started with that and took a lot of that actual styling because the Camaro ZL1 was meant to be a track capable car. So there are a lot of downforce was kind of built into it the way it was engineered as a production car. And a lot of the things, the cooling vents, we get talked about, it's a little different shape on the race car, but same functionality as far as trying to get the air out up from under the hood to add downforce. That's kind of a neat comparison. It really makes that hood scoop. When we had the shape in the hood from before without having the active air coming out of it, it was just more for styling. But, you sit here and look at the production car here beside of us, and you see that vent of air coming out the hood. It makes a big difference. The proportions of the greenhouse and the deck lid are hard to describe till you actually see it. If you've seen a lot of the current race cars, you look at that's the striking thing. You're like, wow, the deck lid looks really short. But then you look at the production car and they're almost identical. And there's a lot of that styling. It really takes place and a lot of interaction. Trying to keep the competition together and make the car symmetrical really helped a lot of the shapes and different things. And there are some common areas that trying to control the aero performance between the cars around the wheel openings and around the very edge of the tail that we wanted to put more aggressive styling in it and a couple of things. So but in general, side by side to the person that didn't really understand some of the fine details of NASCAR, it was hard to tell them apart, really.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to go to Rob Albright.
Rob Albright, PRN Radio. For either of you, if you know, certainly safety has been at the top of everybody's priority list in the design and development of these new race cars. We had another scary incident a couple of weeks ago at Talladega with Joey Logano getting upside down. Are either of you aware of any specific things that have gone into the design of this race car that would address that issue of cars getting airborne?
You can speak on that.
So, there's been a lot of work by NASCAR over the years, obviously, trying to get what we call the liftoff speed down to, you want to raise that liftoff speed much higher than anything we'll ever see in the race. Now, a lot of things like impacts and crashes and kind of get the car going that way that's hard to actually, prevent. But certainly this car, a lot of effort was spent in some of the safety features. And, you see roof flaps and things that are on the roof of the car now. This car actually has that in the back of the diffuser in the back. So the flap actually comes down. All that was engineered to really, raise that liftoff speed even above the car that we have now. So a lot of test work. We had an unintentional test at California when we crashed a car and didn't really get a situation where we would have seen that, but it certainly at high speed got into some situations. But so I think NASCAR's doing a great job of trying to limit that as much as possible. Certainly it's an active sport with 40 cars on the track doing high speed. But that, it's come a long way. And I think there's a lot of analysis going on with Logano's crash and there'll be actions, I'm sure, at some point taken, but that has been taken into consideration in the design work of this car.
Good to hear. Thank you.
We're going to go back to Sam quickly.
Hi, thanks for taking my second question. I had another question for Chevrolet. I know that these cars have been designed with maybe potential implementation of hybrid systems going into it in the future. How important was seeing that to Chevrolet and did it influence the decision to stick with NASCAR at all?
It's very important. GM, certainly their vision of zero crashes, zero emissions, zero congestion is really all about safety first, right? And then, looking towards, the impact to, the environment. And certainly that vision is something GM has invested heavily in technology-wise. And so as part of, as I said before, you kind of were limited in the package with what happened before. Now with having the transaxle and having a floor, it gives you the ability to look at future technology. Certainly we're going to race internal combustion engines for a long time, and every series in the world really is looking at different types of electrification. Certainly GM is focused on, EV vehicles, and we're, introducing 30 new EV models by 2025. So certainly that discussion, just like this next gen car started 4 or 5 years ago, those discussions are happening now across all the OEMs about bringing electrification in, and it's across the world, and trying to do that in a way that still keeps the entertainment for the fans, but also keeps pushing our vision and what we see. And who knows what it's going to be like in 4 or 5 years, but certainly we're going to be racing internal combustion engines and selling a lot of great products on the street with internal combustion engines for the foreseeable future.
Next, we're going to go to Marty Zakala.
Thanks, Steph. Gentlemen, congratulations on a historic day in the sport. Chase, for you, I'm kind of curious as a pretty good road course racer, with the sequential gearing now in for the next gen cars, how will that affect the shifting at, not just maybe road courses with the 5 gears, but also as well maybe the possibility of downshifting at ovals like Pocono?
Yeah, man, it's kind of one of those questions I don't honestly know how to answer yet until you kind of get in the race and see. But my gut tells me that it's not going to be that much different. To your casual fan now, like, you would never know our cars are H-pattern 4-speeds. Like, the shifting happens very fast. The transmissions are very efficient. They like to be in gear. They want to be in gear. So to me, the shifts are already so quick now. I don't think you're going to see much difference from an outside looking in. And I think once the drivers get used to having that extra gear, and realizing kind of where everything's at, I don't see that being a big change.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we're going to go to Anton.
Thanks, Steph. My question is to Chase. So, Chase, when you saw that Chevrolet Camaro for the first time, what was your initial reaction, initial thought?
Well, I think it looks the best of the three was my first reaction, to be real honest. But my obviously looks aren't everything, and we as competitors know that. Number one, Chevrolet wants to have a competitive car on track, but equally as much, we want to have a car that aligns itself with something somebody can go buy on a showroom floor. And I think they did a really good job of marrying those two things together. The on track and the competitiveness obviously will answer that question next year, but I think they did a nice job in trying to collaborate and bring as much of those two worlds together as possible. So props to everybody at GM for working hard and working together to get that done.
Thank you, and congrats on the big day.
Thanks.
All right, Chase and Eric, I know we have to get you moving on, and we're going to get ready to bring in our next panel here. So thanks so much for joining us, and looking forward to seeing the new car on the track.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.